I'm going to talk with you about Beyond the Wall of Sleep by H.P. Lovecraft. And I know it's not the same, but I have the song Behind the Wall of Sleep completely stuck in my head after reading this and thinking about it. So that'll just be my internal soundtrack as I go through this. So Lovecraft at this point was 29. In the order that I'm reading this, the two stories I read before this were The Alchemist and the Samuel Johnson story. And The Alchemist is just a wizard story set in a Gothic hall. And the Samuel Johnson story is more about Lovecraft dreaming about being able to meet some famous authors. So this is the first one that really gets into the Lovecraft worldview, we'll say, and the kinds of things that he becomes truly interested in, and the kinds of things that many people appreciate him for. So this one talks about dreams and their meaning, and how Freud doesn't have much to say about them that is important because they're just silly symbolism. But he knows, the narrator here, that dreams are not just some fantasy in our head, but they are a different form of reality. And this reality that we feel around us right now is less real than the dream reality, which is the full expression of ourselves as being intelligent beings that can go out in the cosmos and have all sorts of experiences across countries, across planets, across time zones, across time periods, and so on. So this is a lot of what he gets into, in the sense that we're not just humans here, that there are some cosmically intelligent creatures out there that are far more intelligent than us, that have far more powers than we do, and we barely can understand them. So this main character is set in 1900, so earlier, 20 years back before the actual writing of the story, and back when Lovecraft was a young child. And this main character is working in a uh, asylum, a place that they put people that they couldn't handle in normal society. And I have all sorts of feelings about that, so we will skip all of that and just say that's how humanity dealt with people at the time who had challenges. And this person was one of the nurses, helpers in a location like that. And a patient was brought in to work with our narrator, whose name was either Joe Slater or Slater, because these people were not illiterate. They couldn't read or write, so they would only say what their name was, and you had to sort of interpret it. But the implication with the Slater is that this is a Dutch person who lived in the Catskill Mountains, and there were a number of Dutch people. My boyfriend's family is part of the Dutch immigration of this time period, who came in and populated a bunch of the New York area. But our narrator, and we'll say Lovecraft, was not appreciative of this group of people, and the number of negative things said about this whole group of people, we'll just call them Dutch hillbillies to be brief, is that they have sunk into a barbaric degeneracy. They are the white trash of the North. Um, they have no laws, no morals. Their mental status is low, and it's just a result of all their inbreeding. In essence, is what he's thinking, is that they have sunk over the years into a state where they are barely human. They're more like farm animals that have gotten loose and that are just roaming free. So he is brought in to the asylum, and the impression of the we have to give him a name. We'll just call him Lovecraft. The impression that Lovecraft has of this character is that he's not really dangerous. That he's, sort of brawny, but he's clearly very stupid, a harmless stupidity. Pale, sleepy blueness of his small, watery eyes, and they figure he's about 40 years old. So he doesn't know how old he is, because these kinds of people don't have permanent family ties, which, makes no sense. But all right, this is the way that he feels, that they're not even like farm animals that stay together in some sort of a herd thing. They're just roaming wild animals that go here and there and don't even know who their mothers or fathers or so on are. So this person that came in, Joe, can barely talk. He uses a pidgin kind of English, which the people in the asylum can barely understand, and they have a wildness to the way that he's describing things, which makes the world sort of scary. And what they're saying is that when he wakes up out of a dream, that he would talk about truly scary things, but then he'd quickly forget about it and then just relapse into a bovine, half amiable normality like that of the other hill dwellers. Lovecraft is leaning very heavily into this whole these people are all stupid and they're stupid because of all their inbreeding. So, what this saying is that in his hillbilly world, the Slater character was getting more and more violent, and he was drinking more and more heavily, and he'd spend the day drinking, and then he'd sleep all night and have these wild dreams and wake up and tell people about the wild dreams. And in this one particular case, where he lives in a filthy sty where he dwelt with a family as indescribable as himself. This from a person, Lovecraft that is, who is describing all of these other things about this family in all sorts of specific detail. So clearly they're not indescribable. He loves to describe them just in very negative terms. So anyway, Slater goes running out, starts jumping around that he's going to go to a big cabin with roofs and walls and floors and loud queer music, and people try to restrain him, and then he attacks one of the people and then starts attacking the other people, and his family neighbors all flee away, and Joe ends up killing the person that is left behind and then races off. So the villagers, once they feel a little safer, get together and they run into a cop and they track down Joe Slater and they find him and drag him off to the asylum. And Slater says he doesn't remember at all this whole wildness after he woke up in the killing of the person. So they're now in the asylum and they are watching Slater. And it doesn't happen every night, but on the third night, he started having this frenzy and they had to put a straitjacket on him. And they keep talking about alienists. These are psychologists. So the psychologist couldn't figure out what the dream was about. That Slater babbled for 15 minutes about all sorts of great edifices of light and oceans of space and strange music, and then he came back to his normal self. And these things would happen every once in a while, not like every single night, but a fair amount of the time. And the main character decides that he wants to figure out what these dreams are about because he decides that the man himself, Joe Slater, couldn't possibly be having all of these amazing dreams because his brain was too stupid, being a Catskill degenerate, to come up with any of these sorts of things. And he decides that he's going to figure out what these dreams are about. So he says that Slater walked around in valleys and meadows and gardens and cities, and that he would try to chase down a deadly enemy, which was a thing, not a person, or not a human, I guess is what he's getting at. And that he's flying through space and burning things in his path. And the Lovecraft character decides that maybe it's not actually Slater who is having all these dreams, but some sort of a cosmic creature that is just inhabiting Slater's brain, because clearly the kinds of things that Slater is seeing are things that his brain couldn't comprehend, but it would have to be some sort of a super being that was living inside of Slater to be able to see these sorts of things and come up with these sorts of ideas. And he decided that he's going to try to figure out how to read into Slater's brain, because if Slater isn't able to describe the things that he's doing, then maybe talking direct brain to brain would be able to communicate the thoughts directly into Lovecraft's brain. So part of the issue here, I mean, there's all sorts of issues here, but one of them is that, Slater is able to describe the things that he sees. He knows what a garden is, he knows what a meadow is, and he knows what a thing is. So I don't see why you need brain contact to be able to do this. And, other than just the plot of the story, he could just keep trying to talk with him and help him narrow down what kinds of valleys, if that's really what he's after. But for whatever reason, he decides it's completely useless to try to talk with him about these sorts of things, and the only way to possibly get information is through telepathy, because he tried to make a device earlier when he was young, and it didn't work. But surely it's going to work now to get right out of Slater's brain the cosmic thoughts of the super being. And you also have to say, if Slater's brain isn't capable of handling describing the kinds of things he's seeing, how is the brain going to be powerful enough to transmit things? Unless we say it's not coming from the brain at all, it's just coming from the super being in the room, in which case it doesn't need to be on the brain. It's just going to be getting the senses out of the room itself. But in any case, he decides that he's going to put together this brainwave thing, puts it on Slater's head. Slater is now in the process of dying just because of his, uh, poor health. And as um, Lovecraft and Slater sit there in the room together and they both fall asleep, both of them are now dreaming together, and they are actually sharing a dream because this is a alternate reality. It isn't like this dream inside their own heads. So now Lovecraft is able to see the kinds of dreams that the Slater character was seeing, which involve chords, vibrations, harmonic ecstasies, passionately on every hand, stupendous spectacle of ultimate beauty, palatial magnificence, kaleidoscopic rotations, wide plains and graceful valleys. And all of this is saying is that they are one that his mind is creating, the things that he wants. So it's sort of showing him his ideal heaven kind of view based on his own things that he happens to particularly like, is what his thought is. And he realizes that the character that's in Slater's being, because I still don't think it's in his head, is a brother of light, that together they share kinship because the Lovecraft character has been sitting here and taking care of the other guy for so long that they sort of got to know each other in some sort of a sense. And they have a silent and perfect interchange of thought. And that they're happy because the Slater's being is about to escape from his degrading periodic bondage, escaping forever, and he can now follow his oppressor everywhere. And they float around and they're just joyful together. And then finally, they wake up. And Slater is about to die. And finally, we have the being in a waking state able to talk to Lovecraft. And this is where the brain unit comes in, because you couldn't possibly have the super being make Slater's mouth work, but somehow he's able to make the brain work, which doesn't make sense. If you can make the brain work, then you can make the mouth work. But somehow he makes the brain work strongly enough that it can transmit actual word messages, or it says it's transmitting thoughts, which are turning into words in Lovecraft's head. And he's saying that Slater is dead, and it's better that he's dead, for he was unfit to bear the active intellect of cosmic entity. Because, people should just all die if they can't be the puppets of a cosmic entity. They have no other purpose in life. He was too much of an animal, too little of a man. He's been my torment for 42. So why did he go into this person's body then? If he could see that this was going to be a community that was not going to serve his purposes, and now he's stuck there for 42 years. And, why not just, if he's thinking of him as just a carrier creature that's stupid, why not just kill him off? There's all sorts of ways to have done that if he really wanted to move on to another thing. But in any case, he says, we're all roamers of vast spaces and travelers in many ages. Next year I can be in dark ancient Egypt, or in a future world of the Empire of San Chen. So he knows all about the past and the future and insect philosophers on Jupiter. So he can go anywhere in space and time. And with all of this knowledge of everything else, why did he go into this particular character, which was going to serve him no good, if he needed something else? And what did he even need? Because he's doing everything in his dream state. He wasn't doing much of anything at all in his human state. And you could say that's because the human state was so awful. But, I mean, if he was in ancient Egypt, how would the state that he was in ancient Egypt be different? What could he have achieved in ancient Egypt if his purpose is to chase down this cosmic creature that has upset him? Algol, the demon star. And he's vainly striven for eons, held back by bodily encumbrances. But he could do it whatever he wants to in the night sky, so why not go off in the night sky? And, I mean, if his aim is to get close to the demon star? And why wouldn't he go into just the future times where we have spaceships if he needs to physically go there for some reason? Why bother going back to ancient Egypt or other things where you couldn't actually get to the demon star? So he says, tonight I go as a nemesis, bearing just and blazingly cataclysmic vengeance. So that sort of implies that once he's free of the body, he can just head out and do whatever he wants to. So why go into a body again? Maybe he's just trapped randomly by fate in random bodies after he's out free of a body for a while. We do not know. And if you get stuck in a bad body, why not just kill it off so that you can then cycle into another body, which hopefully is in the future, which hopefully has space travel so you can get over to where you're trying to get to. So many questions. So suddenly the body dies, in which case the space alien can no longer send its signals because somehow it's attached to the brain, even though he couldn't use the brain to speak or do other useful things. And the main character goes over and decides to try to take a look at the body, but he's definitely dead. So then he says that he tried to tell his superior, whose superior said, "You're absolutely insane. You get to go on a long vacation with full pay," which, sounds pretty nice if I can just get a full pay vacation by claiming that I can read the dreams of other people and they're really supernatural humans that are on some sort of a cosmic quest to kill off other supernatural humans. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. And he says that he, on the night after Slater died, he has proof that this actually was all true because a marvelous new star was discovered by Dr. Anderson not very far from Algol. No star had been visible at a point before then. Within 24 hours, the stranger had become so bright that it outshone Capella. And then it faded. But light doesn't travel instantly. So if it's like 24 hours after the stranger faded, let's say the stranger is able to travel at super speeds, and 24 hours later, the stranger was actually near Algol. If the stranger then blared into bright light, we humans on Earth would not see it then because light takes a long time to get to us. So the stranger would have had to have gone back in time to exactly the point when, if he then caused a bright blast of light, the light would take enough time to get to us that it would happen right 24 hours after the stranger had left the body. And if you're going to do that, why not do it like right at the same time? Why not time it so that the Slater died and then suddenly there's this bright light to announce that the guy is free? Because I mean, it's really just a signal to this one person. No one else knows what's going on. So, a little strange. Maybe he just liked the 24-hour thing to give the guy time to over rest and overcome all of his feelings about the death of his strange friend and the corpse of the body that the friend had been using. So I like the descriptions. I like the sense of there's a horror going on and that it could be real, but it could be beyond our understanding and there's no way to really get a handle on it. I like the way the scenes unravel, but I don't like this whole sense that these people are have harmless stupidity and that they have no laws and no morals and that they have no family ties and they are just a pile of, I mean, you could even say wild animals, but like wolf packs have family senses and they have an order to them and things that they can do and things that they can't do and so on. So they're even lower than most wild animals. And, you could say ants, but ants have family structures and have ways that they do things. So you'd have to go down to, I don't know, worms or something that are just sort of not intelligent and don't have families and just sort of mindlessly bobble around until they die. So I find that very iffy. But it's also, he's not super young at this point. He's 29, but he's just getting started on his main writing journey. And it's intriguing to see the world that he's coming up with, and we will see how it progresses in the future. I just have so many issues with Lovecraft's rantings about people who he thinks are lower than him and how they should just be killed. But that is where we're going to go with this. So I suppose you have to, like with many artists out there, appreciate the parts of them that you like and speak out about the things that you are iffy about and hope that we can do better in the future. So let me know if you have any questions about Beyond the Wall of Sleep by H.P. Lovecraft. I would like to hear your interpretation of them.